How you guys doing today? I'm Gavin. I'm the Blender Blue Belt. We're going to learn how to track the camera to an object in Blender 2.8. Here's my camera. Here's just the basic setup. Here's the object I'm going to track to. Let's actually move the cube a little bit this way, so it's off this axis, because I'm going to now add a let's add a UV sphere. So this object is going to just come along this axis and pass with this sphere in the foreground. So first we're going to animate. This is the way I'm going to do this. We're going to move the cube along the x-axis all the way out here. We press I, creating a keyframe options. We pick the location. That's what we're animating right now. If we move down the timeline, say to 120 frames, I'm going to widen out here so I can just see what I'm doing here. We're going to move this on the x-axis again, go all the way down to here, and that's where it's going to end up being, the cube. So we press I again, so now we have another location keyframe here. So now we can see that's how it's moving along. What's up? Okay, so now if we go back to camera view, the camera is just pointing at the sphere because that's just where the camera is pointing. There's no reason it's pointing there except for the fact that it is pointing that way. If I was to rotate the camera, rotate it on the z-axis, boom, that's where it's going to be pointing. Okay, so that's pretty obvious, but you'll understand why I'm explaining that. I'm going to select the camera because now I want to make it track to that cube over here. So let's select the camera. We know we're in camera because that's how I know I can see the camera icon. But you also have the name of the object up here and up here. So you know you've selected the object, but it's highlighted in yellow around here. So we're on the camera. I'm going to select the camera object constraint tab, add an object constraint, and if you drag down right here on this second to the right row column, we have track to. Excellent. Now we have two objects in our scene. We have a cube and a sphere. We're going to select the cube because that's what we're going to track to. We're going to set up the axis because the camera we don't see it here because it doesn't know what's up or what's down. So every time just select -C for the 2, and we're going to select the up being Y every time. So now we're influenced, we're tracking, we're going to press play, we're seeing our animation, boom, there we go. That's our object passing by. Isn't that great? One little if let's suppose at the end of the scene I want if we take off this, remove the influence, over here is the influence tab, which tells you I can drag left, and that means the track 2 is having no effect. So the camera is defaulting back to wherever it was pointed, which was right at this sphere. And if I go back to influence 100%, 1, essentially, it's going to be tracking to whatever object the constraint is telling it to track to 100%. So let's suppose we maybe want to change, we want to see this object pass by that sphere. It goes along here, and then eventually we want to go back to that sphere. The way we essentially would do that would be to remove the influence, so it will go back to its default where it is without any influence. So we're at 100%. Our object is moving along the timeline here. Our camera is selected. We're gonna press I as we're hovering over the influence. Now we've put a keyframe for the influence there. It's still at 1, so it's tracking 100%. Maybe at this point I'm going to drag the influence down to 0. So now it's not tracking anymore. The influence is 0. It's just going back to wherever the camera was pointing. So now here's what we got. It passes by, goes that way, and bam, we see that. And there's different ways to change the interpolation of, these are both selected, these keyframes. I can right click and I can select interpolation mode. Let's use Bezier. Boom. So it's gonna make it a little smoother the way the influence goes away. Boom. So there you go. We have an influence 100% following the cube. Now, according to this, our influence changes, and we can see it right here. That influence is dropping between these two keyframes because this keyframe is 0 and this keyframe is at 1. And that's how you can do some tracking on some objects. So have fun with that and have a great day. Peace.